Do you know who this is? This is a four-star, highly decorated four-star general whose privacy was invaded, and as a result of it, he lost his job and almost ended up in prison. And this person was fooled by an email message, and as a result of that, an entire presidential election was probably affected by it. In this session, we're going to talk about how you can protect yourself from some of the really bad things that can happen to you out on this amazing thing called the internet. In this session, we're going to talk about various things. Number one is how you can protect your privacy, how you can avoid wasting time, how you can back up your data in the best way possible, how you can, which is the right type of user account you should use on your computer, how you can avoid being fooled, how you can physically protect your computer, and how you can protect the most important thing, your body. First, how to protect your privacy. What is privacy? Basically, according to the dictionary, it's a state or condition of being free from being observed or disturbed by other people. Interesting. In the old days, when we lived in villages and hundreds of thousands of years ago, there really was no such thing as privacy. Everybody knew what everybody else was doing. Nowadays, we do have a sense of privacy, but because of the increasing use of computers and things, our privacy seems to be getting less and less over time. Now, it can have serious consequences. This is General David Petraeus, a four-star general, highly decorated four-star general. He did a great job over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was promoted to be the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Pretty good job, okay? And this is his lovely wife here. It's very nice. And this is General, who's this? This is Paula Broadwell. Paula Broadwell was his biographer and also his mistress. Now, how do we know that? We know that because someone got into their email and saw the love notes between them. And as a result of that, he lost his job, and because he was sharing some sensitive top secret information with Paula for the purposes of the biography, which is not good to do, he almost was arrested and almost put in jail. So real serious. Now, these two are very smart people. How was the FBI able to get into their email? Well, basically, they were pretty smart. They never sent an email message over the internet. They knew that all email messages were listened to by either the FBI or the CIA or the NSA. So they never did that. What they did, for example, the general would go on, they would share a Gmail account. The general would go on the account. He would create a message, but not send it. He would leave it as a draft and then close it. And then Paula would come into the same account. She would see the draft. She would make her response to it, close that and save it as a draft, and then he would come back and see her response, and it would go on and on like that. Okay, so that's pretty secure. And even at that, the FBI was able to get in there and read the messages. Wow. So what do we learn from this? If the director of the CIA has no privacy, then how can we expect to have any? Okay, so just be careful about that. Email is never private. Never private. Okay, so be careful about that. Can employers spy on their employees' computers? Yeah, legally. Okay, you're using the employer's computer and it's his or her time. Yeah, they can do that. And the question is, how many actually do it? Well, they did a survey, how many employers actually spy on their employees. And the number of employers who monitor the keystrokes on their employees' computers is, look at this, 45%, almost half. Wow. The number who monitor web surfing just to see if the employees are going out to Amazon and buying things or whatever, 66%, 2/3 admit to doing that. Employers who monitor email, almost 3/4. Okay, so what does this mean? It means when you're looking for a job, don't use your boss's computer. Don't use your office computer there to go look for the job and get into a lot of trouble. In fact, I knew a guy who was a very smart guy, but he was not too smart. In this case, he used his company email address to look for a job at a competitor company. And yeah, he got the job, but he also got a huge lawsuit and got into tremendous trouble because of it. So be careful. Wait till you get home before you start looking for a job. Now, this thing called spyware, which is basically something, it's a program that you put onto someone's computer and it records all the keystrokes, things like passwords, login IDs, or credit cards, all that stuff, and it keeps it there for a week or a month. And then every once in a while, it sends it off to someone, bad guy, somebody in Romania, whatever, and they do bad things with it. Who uses spyware? You'd be surprised. Hackers, bosses, parents, spouses. Okay, be careful. Okay, people, when you're sharing a computer with someone else, you never know. How do you keep a secret? Well, basically, you could fight spyware. In the old days, we had to actually go out and get something called anti-spyware software. Well, nowadays, all the antivirus software does a good. They do a good job of keeping track of spyware, so we don't have to worry about it too much anymore. How do you protect your email? Well, you could encrypt it, okay, which is nice. You can encrypt it, and there's a simple encryption where you take a key, okay, which will encrypt the message, and the same key can be used to decrypt it. Okay, this is a very simple thing. When you're a kid, you may have fooled around with this kind of thing. It's nice and it's effective. The problem is this key, okay? You have to somehow get the key from one place to another. In World War II, this was a big problem because you had ships all over the place. How do you get the key from one place to the other? Well, the key could be intercepted when it goes across the sea, and then the enemy could know what the key is, and they can read all your email. They didn't have email back then, but they could read all your radio communication. Not good. Okay, so that was a serious problem back then. Nowadays, we have a new thing called public key encryption. This is a remarkable invention here. Basically, instead of having one key that can both encrypt and decrypt a message, we have two keys, a public key and a private key. Now, the public key only does one thing. It can encrypt the message, but it can't decrypt it. Okay, so you could send that public key to anybody. It doesn't matter because they can't decrypt the message. You can put the public key on a billboard someplace. It doesn't matter. The only thing they can do with it is encrypt the message. You, however, keep the private key. This is the key that decrypts the message, and only you have it. Okay, so what this does is it enables people to send you secret messages that no one else can read. Now, what about if you want to send secret messages to someone else? Well, that person has to send you their public key, and then you can encrypt the message for them that only they can read. Okay, so it's a real nice system, and if you want to take advantage of it, there's a couple of third-party programs that you could do, PGP and GnuPG, which will encrypt your email and files and folders, and it does a really good job. But it doesn't encrypt everything, okay? Email has certain things that do not get encrypted. The metadata, the data about the data, okay, your email address, your return address, your subject, these things are not encrypted. And the reason, because if you did encrypt them, the internet would have no way of getting the email to its proper destination. So they're not encrypted, and you could get a lot of information by looking just at the metadata. Look at this, for example. Even though you can't see the message itself, you have a pretty good idea of what's in there. And law enforcement authorities, they can legally look at your metadata. Okay, they can't look at the messages, but they can look at the metadata, and they can get a pretty good idea of what's going on. So be aware of that. Now, social media and privacy, you're probably all familiar with social media. Just be careful. The free social networks that you use, how do they make money? They make money because they're selling what? They're selling you. They're selling your personal information to advertisers. So you may not want that to be the case. Now, there's a great video here by Mark Cuban. You've probably seen him on Shark Tank. And he talks about how you can protect yourself from certain things. So I'm not going to show it here, but if you go to the PowerPoint file, just click on the link and it'll show you this nice thing. There's another link here. If you click on this picture, it shows you another nice video about how companies are trying to track you and get information. TikTok is so addictive, isn't it? I mean, you could just sit down for a little bit and spend an hour just watching all these videos. But be aware, they've gotten into a lot of trouble, which is why the federal government now wants to keep them out of the country. So just be aware of them if they're getting a little too much information. And Microsoft has a video here that you can click on, which gives you a couple of tips how you can secure your data. Now, one thing you should definitely secure is your picture. This is a woman here. They call her a slave, and she basically doesn't know she's being photographed because a bad guy has taken control of her laptop and is taking pictures of her with the camera in the laptop. Okay, and she has no idea this is happening. and it's just terrible. It's really bad. And what they do is these guys they invade a lot of different computers, and they're able to take pictures of whole different women, and they trade them on the internet. Really sick. Really sick. Okay, so be careful about this. What can you do? Well, they call them ratters. Okay, basically just to take pictures and they trade them, and just put some tape on the webcam. Okay, just take a little tape. This is recommended by the director of the FBI, and a piece of tape or a little yellow sticky or something. Just cover over the camera so that people can't look at you unless when you pull off the tape. Then they can see you. Okay, now just be aware there's also a microphone right next to that camera there. And yes, you could put tape on that, but that doesn't stop it. Okay, it still could be listening in on everything that you're saying, and you have no idea that's happening. So just be aware. These great digital devices we have are tremendous, but they also can be very tremendous devices for stealing our privacy. Now, there's a number of devices in our house besides laptops and computers. Okay, these things which are increasingly popular, light bulbs, cameras, thermostats, the Roku device, the Echo device. These are great, but the way they're able to work is because they connect to the internet. And they call this the Internet of Things because they're not really computers. They actually are computers, but we don't think of them as computers. They're things. And there's a lot of them, and they keep growing. The problem is that the people who created these things, they didn't put a high priority on security. And so as a result, the bad guys have figured out a way to turn these devices into bots that they can use to create botnets, which they can use to create a distributed denial of service attack or whatever. Not good. Okay, so you want to be careful. Make sure that you update these things so that they won't be turned into bots. And speaking of things that can be eavesdropped on, this is terrible. These baby monitors, they're great. Okay, they connect to the internet, and if you go to a party, you can then see how your baby's doing, which is nice. The problem is the security on these things is really bad. So bad guys can look at your baby too, and that's really creepy. Okay, you don't want that to happen. So if you do have a baby and you do want to get one of these, make sure it has good security on it. Your phone is a great device, but it also is a great tracking device. And unfortunately, things like Google Apps and iPhones, even iPhones, Apple talks about how it's very focused on your privacy, but it does record significant locations. You just want to be aware of this thing. And iPhone privacy tips, if you click on this link, go to the PDF file, click on the link, you can see some tips to ensure you have privacy because of your phone. Okay, anybody know what this is? This is not Disneyland. This is not an amusement park. This is the Kremlin. Okay, this is the seat of government, the center of government in Russia. And these folks have been so spooked by the CIA and the NSA. They're so worried about our security forces being able to eavesdrop on them that a lot of them have stopped using computers. They're using typewriters. Amazing. Okay, absolutely amazing. Okay, how do you protect your privacy? Well, basically, never consider email as private. Okay, if you must use a private communication on email, use encryption, and just be aware you can't encrypt everything. You can't encrypt the metadata. You can't encrypt the mailing address and the return address. And mind what you say in social media. We'll talk more about that next week. And if you have some information that's sensitive, okay, you don't need to use email. There are other things you could do. Face-to-face meeting, make a phone call. Okay, there are other things you could do besides using email. In this video, we talked about how you can protect your privacy. In the next video, we'll talk about how you can protect another very valuable asset, your time.